YouTubers, here at St Chlamydias we are going to be hosting an Alpha course. If you don't know what the Alpha course is, it's a very major course, over 200,000 people on it at any one time within the United Kingdom alone. It's a course that's spread throughout the land, throughout the world, and it is the #1 course for attracting new Christians. If you don't know about the Alpha course, do look it up on the internet. It's a splendid and wonderful thing. Anyway, today we have with us Mr. John Diamond, who wishes to remain anonymous, so we shall call him Barry. And we shall be talking to him of his experiences and how he came to find Jesus within the Alpha course. So, Barry, could you first explain how you came to the Alpha course and give us your own recollections?
Yeah. Well, my story's not an easy one to tell, to be honest. It's quite complex. But it all started, I suppose, back in the 1970s with things like David Attenborough and more David Attenborough. There were programmes on telly on the BBC. There were things like Trials of Life and, of course, The Life on Earth, which started it all. And I used to watch these programmes and be fascinated by this sort of nature out there. Because where I lived, there wasn't a lot of nature, apart from bad nature. I started to see the world in a way that, well, generations before me probably hadn't had a chance to, you know. And this is an education. I mean, as time went on, I started watching other things, you know. There was obviously all the various life of insects, life of plants, life of mammals, life of reptiles, life of birds, all these sort of programmes that showed me how these things developed in a sort of minor and well, carefree way in some ways. But I got a sort of interest, and I suppose it was just a hobby at first. I didn't realise where it was going to lead me, but I started reading books. There was, of course, Charles Darwin, The Origin of Species, which, well, it was a bit boring really, and I already knew it, most of it. But that's because I've been taught it through these sort of programmes, you know. But I got into more complex stuff, and that was when things started to go a little bit awry. I looked at Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene, then the extended phenotype. It was a revelation. It was a revelation at the time. I thought I knew it all. I watched the programmes, but there was complexities of creatures I had no understanding of, the complexities of evolution and the various directions in which it went. The selfish gene, I used to think it was something about sort of selfish people and things like, oh, everything out for myself, you know. Then I realised, the genetics were important. It wasn't selfishness in that way at all. It's like a herd of cattle. They all get together, don't they? Well, that's not very selfish, is it? Well, it is if you get together for a selfish reason. To protect yourself with using the others, then it's selfish. So it was not really selfish. But anyway, altruism, you know, and how it worked. And it started explaining things in life to me. Well, I started looking at other things, didn't I? Well, if this evolution really worked, then how did we come from a load of monkeys? You know, monkeys, come on, apes, monkeys. You know, we're not, surely no. I mean, I looked at an orangutan and I could see it looked similar, you know, and there was like, and obviously chimpanzees, bonobos. Then I looked at, oh God, what's it? Gorillas, of course, gorillas. Yeah, but gibbons, come on. Nah, not gibbons. But then I started looking into it, didn't I? Anyway, I looked into it and I saw that, well, round about sort of 7 million years ago, bonobos and chimpanzees, they had the same ancestor as the humans, apparently. But 7 million years back, you know, well, that means that if they separated 7 million years ago, then there's been 14 million years worth of evolution in opposite directions, you know what I mean? So I thought, well, yeah, it gives you even more time, doesn't it? Didn't come from a chimpanzee, but the ancestor of both was the same. When they started thinking the same, when they started talking about cats and dogs, and we all know there's different types of cats and dogs. You know, your little chihuahua, you got your great big Great Danes, Irish wolfhounds, and you. And I realised that the separation between those sort of creatures that have been separating within their own kind, as they'd say, and couldn't become cats. So cats can't become dogs, dogs can't become cats. But then it was explained. Around about something like 35 million years ago, they had a common ancestor of both. Well, that meant they were separated not by 35 million years, but by 70 million years, because they'd gone out in separate directions. Well, that started making more sense. Now I could see how cats and dogs had the same ancestor. I started me thinking, and this was when it started to get low. Thinking, bloody thinking. Everywhere I went I was thinking. How did it happen? Let's have a look at some of the evidence. Let's have a look at some of the fossils. Oh, I started looking at fossils. You've got the classic dinosaur to bird fossil, the Archaeopteryx, you know, it showed signs of both. You look at the amphibian to you know, the fish to amphibian type, right back in the Devonian. And you looked at Tiktaalik, for instance, it had feet. It was a fish with bloody feet. Well, that's exactly what you'd expect to find, isn't it? So these creatures did exist. Well, it made me think of them more, human evolution again. Well, we must be able to find some bones. There must be bloody loads of things. We're upright, walking, big brains, opposable thumbs, you know. And there they were, Australopithecines, a whole new group of apes, and they spread. There wasn't just one, there was loads of different types. They could be interbreeding, and they were there though. They don't exist today, but you know, they were there. Well, this started me thinking. Well, how did life come about? How did you get to life? Single cell creatures becoming multicellular life forms. It's impossible, can't be happening. It had to be God, it had to be. But no, I looked. There we were, prokaryote cells, the simple form of cell. Not complex cells, but simple. Eukaryotes came along much later, through endosymbiosis of one to another of the prokaryote cells. And eventually, with millions of species of these prokaryotes, and then you get these eukaryotes, multicellular life forms coming along. But why then? Why do they still have prokaryotes? Well, this was it. It was the eukaryotes that carried the prokaryotes. Prokaryotes never disappeared. They're still here today. Everything, all life forms rely on these prokaryote cells, even though it's the eukaryote, the multicellular life forms, the complex life forms that carry them about. They were in symbiosis with each other. Well, when I got to that point, it was like a revelation. When I went out into the fields, into the outside, every time I looked at something, I understood how it happened. I could see how the grass, which wasn't around till much later, in fact, every time I look at grass I go, oh, modern stuff, you know, modern plants. Because I understood that grass didn't come along till much later. I looked at various trees, I looked at flowering plants, I go, flowering plants, they weren't even around till the Cretaceous. But I understood that they didn't come around until the Cretaceous. They were actually inspired by, it was insects that in fact, in many ways, created flowering plants. And before one couldn't come before the other, there had to be a line of it all. And every time I looked at something, looked at certain plants and go, oh, that's an ancient species, that really has been around a while, that one. And look at others and go, oh, that's a modern one, that's a modern hybrid. And this is the problem everywhere I went. I tried to tell my friends. I spoke to my friends and tried to explain to them, eukaryotes, prokaryotes and the various chemical reactions that went on within them. I would say to them, that in order to produce the various nitrates, etc., the energies of life, you need things to process them, things that live off other things and produce them. To get oxygen, it needs to be absorbed by something which doesn't want oxygen. All these things. I looked at geology, I looked at the White Cliffs of Dover, how they've been made of hundreds of feet of tiny little coccolith type creatures, tiny little bits of dust that died, gone down and made up these hundreds of feet of cliffs in shallow seas. And I could see and I saw the truth, the light, and I wanted to share it with people. And unfortunately, they didn't want to listen. It was a little while later when I realised that I didn't have any friends left. It was a lonely life. I just wanted to discuss things. I wanted to discuss the explosion of the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. I wanted to look into the various ways of. I would probably look into insect species that come together in groupings, altruistic insects. So I wanted to just discuss this stuff. I wanted to discuss it with people. There was no one. There was no one there because they didn't want to listen. I felt like Galileo when he said, "Come look at my, just come and look at my telescope, and I will show you the planets." And they go, "No, you're an evil fucker. Piss off." So after a while I realised that I'd become an atheist. I didn't mean to become an atheist. I didn't want to be an atheist. I just couldn't believe in God anymore. If God did exist, then it was a bloody long time ago. I mean, there's no point in being a bloody thinking about it, is there? That was really the lowest point, the lowest ebb. Because no one would talk to me anymore. I mean, Richard Dawkins may have spoken to me if he knew me. Fortunately, he was too busy. And that was the same with, I wasn't in a university. I wasn't a professor or anything. Didn't have those sort of friends. My friends just glazed over and started talking about fucking football. And then latest GTI, bloody Volkswagen they just got or something. I just got so bored. I just realised that nobody was at my level. And that's when I decided to go on an alpha course.
Yes, well if you would just explain to the public, please, how you came to alpha, or at least what alpha did for you. How did it change your life?
Well, the thing was that the course, the alpha course, it advertised itself as answering life's questions. And I realised that if I was ever going to get any friends, that I needed really to look into the life's questions from a different perspective. It was difficult at first. I was accused of being arrogant because I'd researched so much. But in time, and after, it was a tricky time, I must admit, it did help that I told them that I was a convicted criminal, an armed robber. If I'd have said that I was a scientist, I wouldn't have been taken quite so seriously. But luckily, it seems that it doesn't matter what you've done in life, that Jesus will forgive you. And God will forgive you for all those things. And so it seemed like, just telling a little porky pie, a little lie there, a little lie about my armed robbery, didn't seem really on the scale of things that bad, and I'm sure that Jesus or God would have forgiven me anyway. So really, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Yeah, I was a bit of a scientist, but you know, luckily, the Alpha course showed me the real true path and the true light. So yeah, the Alpha course has really transformed my life. I mean, there was the cooking for starters, lovely food, lovely people, and I found a whole new group of friends. Yeah, I had to pretend I liked Jesus. In a way, you know, it don't matter, does it? He's a nice enough guy. You read the book, I read the book, you know, which apparently is all you have to do to become a bloody vicar, as of course you know yourself. But, you know, it transformed my life. The Alpha courses, it brought me to Jesus. I'm not sure he existed, but yeah, I'm willing to go along with it. You know, go along with it. Go along to the Alpha course and make your own mind up. Because life's questions, you know, they can control your life. It's all you think about. And luckily, you know, if you want friends, then definitely, you know, the Alpha course and Jesus. And when the talking in tongues was a bit weird, I must admit. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but I just did I remembered like the flower pot man when I was little. Flobba lobba lobba lob, lobba lobba lob. You just do a bit of that. And everybody thinks you're great, you know, born again. You know, why not? I mean, first time I was a scientist, and now I'm one with Jesus. And yeah, go along. I'm now, you know, I've read the book, read the Bible, and it does encourage you to do that. And now I have a totally different outlook on life. You know, obviously, 6-day creation and great. I mean, God turns up in a cloud to talk to Jesus and Moses. Which I must admit, that bit does puzzle me a little bit, but because if Jesus is God, then why did God turn up in a cloud to talk to him? But I think it's a metaphor for the whole Bible, really. Metaphors, parables, you know, you can learn so much from them. And yeah, now of course I'm a group leader in the Alpha course, and training to become a nun.
So there you have it. Thank you very much, John, for being. Thank you very much, Barry, for being here today. And if you wish to get on the Alpha course, well, we'll be hosting one here at St Chlamydias. It's a 10-week course, and we are taking bookings now. So book your place and get on the Alpha course. Went on a bit, didn't he?